Hi, I'm Nan Simonson, and I recently heard a podcast or during which I continued to think and say out loud in some cases, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, and I want to share it with you. I've done a number of these, and the background of it is that every morning I work out. I either run up a nearby mountain, 4 miles of paths, or I will do a 10K. I'm working up to a half marathon, so I do that at least a 10K once a week, and or I'm cycling for an hour and a half. Well, I always do it. I shouldn't probably. I should be more mindful, but I like getting in several things, and I do it with a podcast, something of interest. And one of the people that I follow religiously is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He has, God, what does he have? Something like 1 million followers now. He's a neurobiologist out of Stanford University with his own lab, studies the brain and ophthalmology, the eyes, because the eyes are part of the brain. And he's brilliant. He's a youngish man. I'm 71, so anyone in their 40s is relatively young. I have a 44-year-old son, so I think of him as young. Well, he interviewed another neurobiologist who is known as one of the top 3 to 4 experts in the world on memory and the formation of memories. In other words, how our brain works as it relates to the things that we store and how we can then use them. And boy, is this important, because if you've ever had a period of brain fog and you realize you couldn't capture your thoughts properly, or your memories, or you're my age and you start doing interesting things and think, oh my gosh, I hope it's not that D word, dementia, or the A word, Alzheimer's. You don't want to lose one bit of what goes on up here, because what goes on up here is who we are. If all that's gone, so are we. So I was listening to a podcast. It's a nearly 2 hour podcast. I've listened to it now 3 times, because I love the details. And so I'm encapsulating it here for you. And there were so many things I didn't know. So I'll give you some things to think about, and I'll encourage you to watch this when I post it on my YouTube channel, YouTube Nan Simonson, with a space between Nan and Simonson, just like you would if you were writing your signature. I'll also post the link to it, but I'll tell you the title and you can find it. You go to YouTube, and the podcast is Dr. Huberman and Dr. Suzuki, Suzuki, or you could go to Dr. Huberman and look at the podcast, Boost Attention and Memory with Science-Based Skills. Boy, was that an understatement, because there was so much I learned. So what does, and this was the preempt to this Facebook Live, what does exercise, memory, and mood have in common? Well, what's interesting about it is they have so much in common. And this is what Dr. Suzuki realized, experimented with, and is all about. The effect of exercise on not just cognition, not just the things that we expect, like our health and our physiology, as it relates to the things we expect, muscle tone and endurance and well-being, in terms of being able to get around and move without difficulty, because we continue to move, which means we can do that without difficulty. But this is about the brain. It's a little bit harder to quantify that way. I'll tell you a little about her. She is a full tenured professor at Duke University. She has just been elected the chair of the Arts and Sciences Department at Duke. She has several outreach programs, and she is one of the top 3 to 4 doctors in the world on this subject. And she has a TED Talk. You could go to TED Talk, or you could go to just Google TED Talk Dr. Wendy Suzuki. And she was on, and she was hot. And I think it was, 15 minutes, and certainly made a point. So let's talk about this. I'm going to be using a term that you've heard, but you may not have completely understood, and that's the, yeah, I guess it's a term, but it's for a thing, and that is the hypothalamus. If you had said to me, Nan, what's the hypothalamus? I would have said, ooh, it's somehow connected to the amygdala, and the amygdala is our emotion center in the brain, usually negative and anxious emotions. But I don't know that much about it. Well, it's the sweetest thing. Hippocampus is the word I'm looking for. The hippocampus, there are hippocampi because there are a couple of them here and here in our brain. And they look a little like a seahorse. They're, as opposed to like the pituitary, this little round thing, or the cerebral cortex, this part of the brain that's just kind of part of the brain. They actually have a shape, sort of like a round shape with nothing in between. In other words, it's this neat little part of the brain on either side. And the hippocampus is the seat of memory. Long-term to a degree, even though the cerebral cortex takes over that after years. But Dr. Suzuki said that they have shown that the hippocampus can even be clear on long-term memory 4 years out. So it's not just a processing center in, chip, 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 and back out again. It holds on to that, but it gets so much more complex than this. And I'm going to be reading a lot from my notes. I listened 3 times. I took pages of notes, and that's what you're going to be getting. I'm not going to try to fancy this up and use a lot of my own talk. I'm going to give it to you from their mouths. Exercise changes the brain's anatomy, physiology, and function. Thus, it affects memory and mood. So what does exercise have in common with memory and mood? As I said, everything. The more we exercise, the bigger the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. They actually have shown that they grow in cellular volume. And the hippocampus helps store memory for the past, the present, and the future. Now, what does that mean? How do you store memory in the future? Well, that means imagination and association. So this is a lot more than, oh my gosh, I hope I don't lose that phone number that I used to remember and now is coming a little harder to me. If you think of imagination and association being part of the actual brain structure, being part of the hippocampus, and knowing that you can affect that, I would think you'd be, I know I am, all over it. Because imagination and association gives us, some people would say, free will. In other words, a thinking process to take the history, to take what I'm thinking right now and be able to put it together to plans for the future. That's what started this whole thing. This is my book, Aging Powerfully. I was 6 months away from turning 70 and said, okay, I'll be 70. Am I going to be one of those old 70s now counting the pains and aches and medications? No, 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 I'm going to age powerfully. And then I decided, you know what, it goes beyond there. At 70, I want to look ahead to 80 and 90 and 100. Heck, if the people in the blue zones can do that, why don't I start planning on it? I couldn't have done that without a healthy hippocampus. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about I'll say it now while it's fresh in my mind because I may not get back to it. At the point that I wrote this book, I was was it 2.5 or 3 years? 3 years recovered from an eating disorder that I had from the time I was 15. Actually, 15 was anorexia, 16 began bulimia, and I did not leave that behind until I was 67 years old. Think about it. It's ridiculous, it's sad, it's embarrassing, it's shameful. It was awful. I would never go back, and yet there were times I thought, well, I can't leave that behind. That's my secret stress relief. That's my secret little play day. That's my secret free for all. No, that was hell. And that's another story. And I talk about part of Aging Powerfully. My book is about my memoir, going through several situations, including well, I won't even get into all of that, but the first third of the book is memoir. The final part of the book, 2/3 of it, is a outline for living long and healthy, living powerfully, regardless of where you are right now. You could be at 30 and say, I don't want to think about aging. Well, don't think about aging, think about living with power. And the word powerfully is an acronym for 10 lifestyle modalities that you can adopt that will give you a longer, stronger, better life. I am a health coach with a lifestyle medical practice. I'm an affiliate member of the College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I specialize in lifestyle as medicine, as well as one of the, I'll call it dictates, and by dictates I don't mean commandments, I mean recommendations of the College of Lifestyle Medicine, and that is getting as close to a full whole food plant-based dietary lifestyle as possible. And I did that. I transitioned to that 4 years ago, which is what, almost 4 years ago, which is what helped me leave the eating disorder behind. The benefits of that physiologically, mentally, emotionally, and the way I lived my life, which included exercise every day, an hour to an hour and a half every morning, a half an hour after dinner, a good walkabout. And those I can actually put in the bank and know that they were part of the investment in my ongoing health. And then a book I read made a difference as well, but you can read my book for that one. Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself. The hippocampus helps store memory from past, present, and future. What does it mean for future? What did I say? Imagination and association. It's what scientists are finding and calling the new role of our cognitive development that they're assigning to the hippocampus, something not known before, the setting of context. Something can happen. We can experience a thing. We can experience either a memory or an actual event that then becomes memory. Well, the hippocampus helps put it into context, because out of context, it's simply a thing. It doesn't get attached to anything in terms of cognition. And doing it with the elements of the past, present, and the future is something that was also clarified. Long-term storage and long-term memory is in our cortex, our cerebral cortex, but long-term memory can be found in the hippocampus, as I said, for, well, as she has researched it, up to 4 years, and could be even longer than that. So what does exercise have to do with it? The E word. We'll talk more about how you can fall in love with that E word. Exercise causes the release of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. All of those are neurotransmitters that make us feel good. And I think a lot of us already know that. The runner's high, I've taken up running. I did that in my 70s, and now I've done several, well, now I'm doing a 10K every week, so I can build up to the half a marathon. But yes, there is such thing as a runner's high. And a key, so it causes the release of these neurotransmitters, and it causes the release of a key molecule for memory called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. Brain-derived neurotropic factor. We're going to be talking a lot about BDNF. Brain-derived neurotropic factor goes to the hypothalamus and helps strengthen the memory center and improve cognition. In her words, it helps to grow a bigger, I love this, I was going to say only a woman would say this, and maybe that's true. I don't know if a guy would ever say that, but she says, and she says this several times, it's very fun. She says, it helps to grow a bigger, fatter, fluffier hippocampus, which is the brain's memory center, and it's never too late to care about that because studies have shown that we continue neurogenesis. Neurogenesis means the development and the growth of neurons, neural connections, neurogenesis, the development of new neurons in the brain, even into our 90th year, 9th decade. Now, some of you are so young, you can't even fathom that. At 71, I'm realizing these things are coming up pretty fast, so I care a lot. I want a very sharp brain in my 9th decade. Who wouldn't? Dr. Suzuki, and her name, by the way, is Wendy. Dr. Wendy Suzuki. You've got to see her TED Talk. It's really fun. Dr. Suzuki emphatically states that every time we rigorously move our body, we give our brain a bubble bath. See, very, very feminine terms. We give our brain a bubble bath of neurotransmitters that were mentioned above and improve many areas of our brain. Every time we do this, it helps us better store and retain long-term and short-term memory and helps put off the effects of dementia and Alzheimer's. Also affected is the prefrontal cortex, improving focus and ability at shifting our attention. Well, we know that the cognition, front brain cognition, has everything to do with how well we can get tasks done, our ability to make decisions, our impulse control. A lot of that, all that has to do with the prefrontal cortex. And we want that to be as big and fluffy as possible as well. Improving the ability of shifting attention. She pointed out that the most valuable exercise for this kind of change and improvement is cardiovascular exercise. In other words, getting our heart rate up. An important mechanism here is that it increases blood flow to the brain, and in this case to the hypothalamus, as it relates to the improvements that were referred to. Studies have shown that even 10 minutes of walking outside can shift our mood. It's part of that bubble bath that I'm referring to, but to affect and create that big fluffy hippocampus response that Dr. Suzuki recommends we aim for, it takes at least 30 minutes a day of aerobic exercise. And what does aerobic do? It raises our cardiovascular rate and raises, therefore, our blood pressure and gets the blood pumping, including to the brain. Any kind of exercise that does this will do. Whatever way we get our heart rate up, she points out that even a power walk done vigorously enough has that effect. There are two pathways involved here. One is to release, or the release of myosin from the muscles that will cross the brain-blood barrier and get to the hippocampus. So our muscles release something called myosin, which goes then to the hippocampus. That stimulates the release of BDNF, what? Brain-derived neurotropic factor in the brain. The other pathway is through our liver, the release of a ketone, beta-hydroxybutyrate, that can get through the blood-brain barrier. Some of you are familiar with beta-hydroxybutyrate because you think, oh, well, if I go into ketosis, I'll get plenty of butyrate. Well, you can get that without going into ketosis. That's not at all what we're talking about here. That goes through the blood-brain barrier as well and stimulates the BDNF. So again, brain-derived neurotrophic factor is stimulated in these two ways, from the muscle as well as from the liver. Even with a one-off 30-minute cardiovascular exercise session, there were 3 major effects that were noted. This was in people in their 20s through their 90s. One was that it was a mood booster. It increased the feelings of well-being and decreased depression and anxiety, as well as hostility scores. 2, increased the activity in the prefrontal cortex. That means that it improved focus and attention on tasks. And 3, significantly improved reaction time. Not just motor reaction time, which is your physical response to things, but also your mental reaction time. Your brain moved better with even a 30-minute one-off exercise session. These benefits for the one-off, we'll keep saying one-off, meaning it's not even it's not been habituated, can last up to 2 hours or longer. She simply didn't test longer, so she doesn't know how long it actually continued to affect us in that way. For these reasons, exercise early in the day can have a profound effect on outcomes. Exercise always raises cortisol levels, and if you don't know, cortisol begins to raise in the morning anyway, and it levels off in the afternoons, and that's just natural. It further raises cortisol and can have a profound effect on the outcomes. Exercise much later in the day, though, including in the evening, can affect sleep because of that. Cortisol, of course, is adrenaline, or it causes the effects of what we call adrenaline. So for most of us, the best time to get our exercise is when we need to use our brain, and therefore usually in the morning. Bottom line is that 30 to 40 minutes of aerobic exercise a day will have all of these positive effects. An interesting Swedish study that she noted took a group of 40-year-olds, women, who were categorized as low fit, medium fit, and high fit, and tested them for cognitive skills. And then they sent them off. I don't know how these things happen. I would imagine that they used that information to some degree at that time. But 40 years later, they went back to find these women who are now in their 80s, and they tested them again. They found that the women who were in the high fit category, that means they moved their bodies, were shown to have a measurable 9-year extension on the most important measures of cognitive brain health. So does exercise matter? Does exercise affect mood and attention and memory and cognition? Oh, heck yes. There's a definite relationship between body vitality and brain vitality. She also points out several times that our body loves rhythms and repetition. The more we exercise, and this is what I want to point out, the more we exercise, the more we want to exercise. If you're in a place at a time in your life where for whatever reason you've stopped moving or you move very little, the thought of exercising, I'll use the word, I like movement because in lifestyle medicine we talk about 4 pillars of health, one of which is movement, moving your body in any way. Another of which, since I've mentioned one, is community, being involved with others, being involved with them with us. Another is sleep and stress relief. These are all major pillars of health. The other is nutrition. Anything we put in our body, including the things that don't belong there in large quantities, drugs and alcohol, as well as the food we put in our body, and that's where the recommendation comes in. Highest recommendation for whole food, plant-based as much as possible. So again, the more we move, the more we want to. If you haven't and you don't, and you take a 10-minute walk, before you know it, 15 will be fine. Before you know it, 20 will be fine. When I decided I was going to run a 10K in July of, was that 2020? Or 2021. I could barely run down the block. It was painful. I hated it. I didn't like the way the whole thing felt, jiggle, jiggle, and all of that. And before I knew it, because I by then had already signed up for the 10K and announced to people I was going to do it. And before I knew it, I could do the block. Before I knew it, I could do a block and a half. And I just kept adding. And the more you do it, the more you want to, because our body loves rhythms and repetition. In that, let me get back to my notes. Okay. The good news is for those who don't regularly exercise, even 30 minutes, 3 times a week can bring about positive changes that are measurable, which will then most likely lead to cementing of habits that will give the rest and the best benefits as we live them through, because we create habits by doing something, and the more you do it, the more habitual it becomes. Due to the effects of our circadian rhythm, which likes repetition, if we exercise at approximately the same time every day, it's easier than mixing up exercise at different times. Our body begins to crave certain action and falls into a rhythm with them. So she made a point that our brain and our body, especially due to that, love, and these were her words, love, love, love consistency. And so 2 things, you do it often, your body loves it once more, starts pushing you to do it instead of pushing you to sit on the couch, and the more fun you have doing it, and then again, the better the response. An essential, not to be overlooked, is adequate sleep. So now she's shifting gears a little bit. Prioritizing sleep, at least 7 to 9 hours a day. I think she said 7 to 8, and I'm saying, or 7.5 to 8, and I'm saying 7 to 9 because I'm following what the Sherzais, the neuroscientists at Loma Linda University, who also have their own lab, husband and wife team, they give that broader picture of 7 to 9 a day for brain health, and they study Alzheimer's. This also affects the brain in crucial ways. She told her own story about how increasing from 6.5 hours a night to 7.5 hours a night caused a huge and measurable difference in the way she was able to perform at work in her job, and she saw the difference quite dramatically. She described the sleep component by saying, it simply and absolutely helped my brain work better. What does working better mean? Well, when we say making our brains work better, we're talking about basically everything that has to do with our maneuvering through life in a way that, quite frankly, we can take for granted. Dr. Suzuki also touched on another physical habit, personal habit, that she practices every day. One is that her regimen is to exercise 30 to 45 minutes a day, cardiovascular exercise every day, and she said every day means 7 days a week. Again, doing something habitual. She says she loves, because I work with patients and I hear reasons when we check in with our pillars of lifestyle medicine. How are you doing with movement? I hear a myriad of reasons why they can't exercise. It's too cold outside. It's rainy outside. It's too dark outside. It's not safe. It can go on and on. Well, she doesn't even worry about that because she has an app she mentioned. It's called Daily Burn. The app Daily Burn, she said, comes with thousands of different kinds of exercises, different periods of time that you can exercise in your own home, kickboxing and calisthenics and all kinds of things. And she uses that to get her 30 to 45 minutes a day in her own home. And I thought that might be helpful. And she also talked about another practice, and that was that every day after her workout, she takes a shower. And she calls this practice her cold shower blast. After exercise, she takes a warm shower, then she turns it to cold. By the way, I do the same thing, and I'll mention that. This sends out a blast of adrenaline, awakens I love this, locus coeruleus. Look it up, locus coeruleus, which is Locus Coeruleus, locus coeruleus, the back part of our brain. See, we're learning these things. What is that? That stimulates feel-good chemicals like dopamine. Even 1 to 3 minutes of cold at the end of the warm shower can create this response. And she said it makes you feel so good, so vibrant, so alive, that the effect of that lasts quite a long time afterwards, improves moods and the feeling of awakeness and of just well-being. I adopted this same practice almost a year ago. Well, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago. I'll take a shower and then I'll simply turn it all the way off. And I did this even in Denver recently, and it's really cold water in Denver compared to Southern California, and it was cold. But I remember when I first started doing it, it was hard. It was painful. I would turn it, and then I'd sit there thinking, oh my gosh, it's coming. And then I'd actually exclaim, gird your loins. And I saw it almost as a negative thing I had to live with, because I had read about heat shock proteins, the value to your immune system, how it will help you develop your elements in your immune system that help fight other difficult situations, and these things have been documented. Well, now I envision, and I'm going to give you, we're almost done, but I'm going to read one last thing to you that will help you understand how our attitude about what we're doing really does make a difference. Now, I imagine, when I turn it down, I imagine that I'm standing at the bottom of a waterfall in a beautiful meadow or in a tropical place. We've been walking, it's warm, and I'm standing in that waterfall. Waterfalls coming down from mountains of melted water, melted snow, can be really cold. But I'm imagining loving it. We've been warm, we've been walking, it's tropical or not, depends on that day. And when it hits, I actually imagine it feeling wonderful. And I get it all over, because I have a hose type shower head, get it all over the place, and then wash down the shower with the hose, let myself warm up a second, and then do it again, so that there's sort of the double blast. And it does. It's energizing. It feels terrific. I think my body loves it. I know my hair does on a day that I'm washing my hair, because it closes all the, I think they say it when you rinse your hair with cold water, it closes the, it's not cells, it's whatever it is, anyway, it's good for your hair. It makes it shinier. I don't know. Okay, a finishing thought. And this was brought up by Dr. Huberman. Hey, Dr. Suzuki, is this true? Does it make a difference? And she acknowledged that it does. The power of mindset and our attitude. Let's see. The power of attitude and mindset on our will, on what is, that we're, let's do this again. Back up. Power of our attitude on mindset on what we're doing and how well, not only we enjoy it, but also how well we benefit from it. One's belief about a behavior impacts the outcome of that behavior. Telling yourself something is positive about what you're engaged in, or telling yourself something positive about what you're engaged in, be it exercise or work, improves mood, enjoyment, and ultimate outcome. So mindset and affirmations matter. I actually posted something just a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Oh gosh, the third week of May, and this is June 1st, 2020 today, or maybe it's June 2nd, 2020 today, June 1st, called My Life-Altering Ayurvedic Prayer. It had everything to do with affirmations and kind of going through a mental list of our beliefs, positive beliefs about anything going on in our life, and how I could trace back results I got from that practice. Well, it was really good for me to hear them acknowledge that even in something like exercise, what you're thinking about it while you're doing it will affect the outcome, your mood, and your enjoyment. And I think that's all I have to say. I'm going to post, oh, wait a minute. I'll remind you of the name of the podcast. It is Boost Attention and Memory with Science-Based Skills, Dr. Andrew Huberman, Huberman. I follow him. I really like his work. And Dr. Wendy Suzuki. She's written a lot of books, a lot of them textbooks. And look for her TED Talk. And if you have a chance, take some time to play this podcast. There are a lot of things I had no time to talk about. And every time I heard it, I heard something different. So thank you for your time if you've made it this long. And take real good care of yourself. And consider getting Aging Powerfully. I hear it's a good book. I think it is. And have a great day, because I know I'm going to. Bye-bye.